You're listening to the Win Moon Podcast, sponsored by Alpha DAO. Join us every week to listen to up-to-date news on the markets, macro, and the best degenerate stories you can't find anywhere else. Nothing on this show should be taken as financial advice. The opinions spoken here from the hosts and guests are our own personal opinions and should not be taken as financial advice. Now, let's get to the hosts, Clay and Taryn, and get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Win Moon Podcast. This is episode number 4, and it's going to be a special one. We have Mr. Jason Stone, a.k.a. 0xB1, the massive DeFi farmer. I'm Clay. As always, my co-host Taryn. Taryn, what you been up to?
It is a very big storm in England, so I'm keeping myself indoors.
Nice. Jason, yeah, we're glad to have you on. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time.
Of course.
Yeah. What you been up to, man? We got to hang out a little bit in New York. Got to meet you. Very cool guy.
Yeah, thank you. Just been taking a step back this summer, trying to enjoy the sun. I feel like global warming's hitting us pretty hard. We're starting to already see some cooler temperatures in New York for September. So, waiting for the merge, enjoying the weather, seeing what's up.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of our fans that we have are into NFTs. You recently had a very high profile sell, the Trippy Ape. I think it sold for like $3.5 million, if I'm correct. Can you kind of tell us, like, how does that go down? How did you get to, like, how did that whole thing come about? How did you do the over the counter sell? Yeah.
Top guys in the BAYC, MAYC space. He runs Mutant Cartel. He's a close friend. I'm involved in Mutant Cartel as well. Obviously people know that, I have the Mutant Demon, and he had a real vision and has a real vision for using that Mega Trippy to do a lot of different things, from brand activations to different metaverse plays, as well as having it involved in the Mutant Cartel itself. So, he'd been pushing, and it just seemed like the right time and the right deal. I couldn't be happier. I'm involved in kind of the Trippy Co, which he created around the Trippy Ape, and so I'll reap a bit of the rewards of what he does with it. But yeah, at this point I'm just along for the ride, and I'm excited that someone that's so prominent in the BAYC space has access to one of the top mutants. As we've seen, there already been a couple rumors and different things that have launched. I know that the 10K store has done a few things, but I know Lior is working with some major watch companies, as well as some other big fashion brands to do some things with the Mega Trippy. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. And I couldn't be happier.
It's pretty cool. On a higher level, what do you think of the future of NFTs and BAYC in particular?
Yeah. NFTs, I feel like everyone says that when you're in crypto, like, a day is like a week or a day is a month, and we live in crypto for a year. It's like a decade in the real world. And I think that in NFTs, that's even more true than in crypto. Things change so fast. And, just like what we've seen with the, surge of interest and NFT launches in the pseudo swap model in the last month, it's really been incredible. It's been like an insane shift from what we were typically used to in standard launches or NFT or OpenSea storefront type things. My view is that I think that the PFP madness, let's call it, has kind of lived out its hype. I think that the blue chips that we have are here to stay. But I also think that we do see some more PFP collections launching through the new pseudo model. I don't think that that's really going to hold. I think that the PFPs that we do have are going to consolidate, and the collections that have built a following are going to iterate in the way that they can. I actually foresee us moving more, and maybe you guys had mentioned you wanted to talk about, Kobe's recent tweets, but, I feel that we've moved a bit back toward NFTs being an outlet for traditional art, and a more kind of malleable outlet for traditional art, such as art blocks, generative art, things like, Fidenza's ringers. I think in the last 3 months, we've definitely seen a resurgence in interest in art blocks, generative art on Ethereum, as well as Tezos and a couple other chains. I really feel like we're going to get back to that core model of, NFTs are a medium for artists to, release their art in ways that they can better control than the traditional art world, as opposed to the PFP world. I also have a very strong feeling that NFTs as a technology primitive are going to be very deeply utilized by traditional financial markets and other forms of hard asset markets. I know that we've seen a couple kind of random happenstances of some like townhome in New York being NFTified and sold via OpenSea on an NFT. I don't know if that's the model, but I do think that NFTs as a technology or as a primitive are ripe for usage by traditional financial models.
I agree.
So whether that's options or derivatives, other things like that, prepackaged indexes.
Real estate wise, I do have some friends out in Dubai who managed to get the VARA license to tokenize real estate, and they've done about 100 million dirham in deals in the last year or so already, and they're looking to expand into the Saudi market very soon. So we are seeing traction on that end, and it's pretty cool. Mainly for the people who want to get exposure to real estate and want to go down the regulatory and the compliant way. And Dubai seems to be a very sort of hyped up market for NFTs and metaverse.
Yeah. Jason, I did want to ask. I wanted to follow up one thing you brought up earlier. So recently there was a tweet by Kobe. Everybody knows Kobe, and he was kind of getting into it a little bit with some guys, some back and forth, where some guys like Punk 6529, I think it was D's, some other guys. Anyways, Kobe's basically just saying that he thinks NFTs are basically, they're just shit coins with pictures, and they're nothing more than that. And people aren't putting these things on their walls or anything like that. Even like Fidenza's, like, people aren't keeping them. They're just hoping to trade them just like any other coin and make some money on them. I was kind of seeing what your thought on that was, because I kind of agree. And when you look at things like the mutant apes, for example, like, I just can't see a world where like mutant apes are hanging on people's walls and framed up and things like that. And, to me, it does kind of seem like, these are basically just alts with pictures that are being traded, and hopefully people are trying to make some money off of them.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple different types of responses to that. First, I want to reiterate that I feel that NFTs aren't necessarily PFPs. Like, NFTs may be used for packaged goods, packaged financial products, indexes in the future. So in that realm, that argument wouldn't even make sense. But we're not there right now. So, in terms of PFPs, I do think that the PFP cycle is coming to an end. I don't think that like Bored Apes or Mutant Apes will go away. I think that there's staying power and community in the way in which people use them today. I don't necessarily think that people need to be willing to put them on their walls for them to have value. I think that just to a large degree, Kobe's sentiment about, having a profile picture attached to an NFT, like most of them are shitcoins, and if you look at them, most of them have been cash grabs. There's maybe 5 to 10 max out of the thousands of PFPs that have launched that have maintained any type of, community or interest long term. BAYC, MAYC, Cool Cats, Doodles, the list goes on, but it's not very long. So I do think that what he's saying is valid, but at the same time, I feel like he's referencing NFTs as PFPs. I don't agree though when he talks about Fidenzas in that way, or Ringers or any other major generative art collection, because I do think that in the next few years you'll see Dmitry Cherniak in the MoMA or Tyler Hobbs, in the Guggenheim, and because their art, their generative art, what they're doing is a form of art, right? Is much deeper than just PFP generative shit. And what I feel like is you're gonna see more traditional artists move over to this space of wanting to release via an NFT, because for traditional art world artists, they're not able to control like royalty streams. They're not able to control how their art moves from collector to collector. And I think that that's like one of the biggest advantages to the NFT space, right? Where people get actual, not control, but some semblance of oversight into how their pieces are moving around and how they're being compensated, right? Like artists are actually taking back a piece of that revenue that doesn't normally go to them. And I think that that's incredibly important. And especially in the more traditional art, which I'd consider generative, not the PFP space, but artists that are releasing generative stuff or just using it as another medium to do stuff, that I think is really awesome. So I do think that I do think that like we're gonna see a world where I hope we don't just see like NFT native artists releasing NFTs. We also see more traditional art world artists releasing NFTs, because that's the medium that they want to release, right? Like if you think about 50 years from now, are people really going to want to transport a 5 foot by 4 foot oil painting across the world, like whether it's security, cost, etc., or are they going to want to show ownership via a line of code where anyone can display the Mona Lisa on their wall in a digital frame, right? It only comes down to who really owns it at the end of the day and who owns that piece of code. So if you think about it that way, I feel like the traditional art world may really move toward I don't know.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Completely makes sense. And also NFTs being used by real artists to unlock that community aspect to art that didn't exist previously on the scale that NFTs bring them about. Also, Jason, most recently, you've been very sort of, I don't want to use the word popular, but what your recent fame on Twitter is through the Celsius lawsuit. In 2018, Celsius launched. And in 2020, they approached KeyFi, as we gather it, to manage their customer assets for them. I'd like you to firstly introduce KeyFi, on what KeyFi is, and what your relationship with Celsius started out as, and whatever you can share. Really, I'm sure our listeners are very excited to hear directly from you, and they have a lot of questions themselves on how the lawsuit is going and just the history behind it.
Yes. So KeyFi was actually a multi-party computation custody software company. So it started as something similar to like a Curve or Fireblocks. Curve was acquired by PayPal. But basically, it was multi-party computation-based custody specifically for staking-based coins and specifically for pooled staking, so that you could optimize staking yield. We didn't ever end up launching a product. Celsius acquired the company before then. So that's what KeyFi was. Celsius obviously created an entity called Celsius KeyFi, which was where my team was housed. And they transferred, as everyone knows, billions of dollars of customer assets to the accounts that KeyFi or Celsius KeyFi were to manage. I'd say the main devil is in the details, but as people can see, Celsius filed against me recently. They didn't once mention the governing contract, which governed the relationship between KeyFi and Celsius KeyFi, or basically me and the company. It's kind of ridiculous they did that. We went after them and said that they, owed us an accounting and owed us what we thought was over $100 million. They basically said that I stole something like $3 or $4 million. They're not sure and asked us for an accounting. The contract, which we attached to our lawsuit, literally says that Celsius is the one that needs to do the accounting. Not much more to say on that. To be honest, all of the key facts are going to come down to discovery, which I'm very confident in. As soon as myself, Mashinsky, Connor Nolan, Patrick Hollard, who was the risk officer when I was there, go on the stand, it's going to be very, very clear that Alex authorized me to purchase NFTs, and those would be deducted, or the money that I spent on them would be deducted from our profit share. Once it was computed, it was said many, many times, both in writing, between different executives and employees. It was a commonly known thing. They claimed that they had no idea I was buying NFTs when I literally made the Twitter account in November 2020, which was and they claimed that they didn't know that I was buying NFTs in February 2021, literally 4 months. Everyone in the company knew I was buying NFTs. There's, stuff in writing about different people talking to me about the NFT purchases I was making. So I'm not concerned there. It is really unfortunate what's happened to Celsius. I've actually been super surprised about the stuff that was released today, that apparently the Vermont and Texas regulators thought that they were insolvent in 2020 or 2019 or something, without the Cell token. Yeah. Something came out today. I didn't read it in depth, but apparently the regulators feel like they were insolvent even before I got there in late 2020, which is news to me. But I will say that all of this stuff comes down really to the way in which management or Mashinsky wanted the company to be run. Remember, he always has been the largest shareholder and really has, had control of the company, on an internal operations basis. And one of the things that came from that top-down approach was, compartmentalization of information and not letting different teams know certain things that he didn't want them to know. And that actually served the company well to get to the size that it did. There was a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say manipulation of different employees, but manipulation of circumstances such that he would allow certain people to know certain things and specifically try and not allow certain people to know certain things to lead to a certain result. And this, is reflected in, how they were operating in the US for so long without licenses, how they operated and were based in the UK for so long without licenses. And I think that, I don't know, I think that what came out a month ago about the Israeli authorities knowing, so much about the insolvency of Celsius from, many years back, I feel like is probably true because on their home turf, I feel like the government probably knew. I don't know for sure. But I am 100% confident that when everyone is deposed, and I truly look forward to that day, that it will only reinforce the fact that everything that we did with NFTs, with lack of hedging, et cetera, was sanctioned and approved by Celsius, and it's going to come out. I don't know why they don't think it's going to.
I think also when you did go public with this, a lot of Twitter was very shocked that 0xB1 was not an individual. It was the address was managed by a whole team of traders and engineers.
We started with 5 and we ended with I think 9 or 11 people when we left Celsius.
What was the different areas of focus? So did you have like DeFi specific traders, NFT specific traders?
So we only had one other trader. It was mostly engineers. So basically people who were making hacking tools, things that would automate different processes for like claiming farming rewards, recompounding, et cetera, doing research into these different protocols. Celsius, I had a multi-year history with the executives. So they trusted me very deeply. They didn't, with the exception of one other person, they didn't want anyone else having direct signer access to capital, with the exception of like capital for testing different technology processes that we were building out. So it was really only me and one, and then 2 other people that had access to, more than 7 figures of funds at a time.
How did you feel when Celsius asked you to manage customer funds? And also, just throwing this in there, whenever I interact on chain, what does the hedging look like for on chain positions, especially when you're at the size that you were? What did it actually look like on that scale? So
for the first 3 months, it wasn't $1 billion. It was in the less than 500 million. And that was partially due to the amount that they transferred, as well as the price of the native assets at that point. Like from when we started in August 2020, to January 2021, things started to get weird with them. I think crypto appreciated like 3x or something. Then it kept going up from there. Maybe I'm a little off on those numbers, but something like that. So when we released our statement, right when we filed our lawsuit, people were like, how is Celsius supposed to hedge against, shitcoin pool 2s and other crazy stuff? And that was actually never what we meant, and not what was intended at all. The agreement was very, very simply hedge the ETH exposure of what we're doing, which was liquidity pools. One way or another, whether it was Alpha Hamura or Uniswap or SushiSwap, we were basically in either leveraged or unleveraged liquidity pools. And when ETH is going up, the way that you hedge exposure to being in a liquidity pool where ETH is one of the 2 assets is if ETH goes up, you will have less ETH later on. Very strictly, they were supposed to be either buying or maintaining open positions on long ETH, or buying ETH calls on the amount of ETH that they were sending us, or at least 90% of it, because that was the kind of status quo that we were discussing, is that 90% of the ETH that we had was in these liquidity pools that were farming other shitcoins to sell back to cash or ETH. So hedging ETH exposure, ETH long exposure to what we were doing would have been very, very simply
that's easy.
What they said they were going to do, which was we're buying long exposure to ETH, because if ETH goes up, you're going to have less ETH, and we need to make up for that. That hedging cost was supposed to come against our P&L, but they never did it for us. I think, I don't know for sure. They never did it for their main portfolio, to my knowledge. And they had a lot of different types of investments past what Celsius KeyFi or KeyFi was doing, that had to do with being exposed to ETH going up and down. So when they would convert ETH to cash and invest in their mining company or invest in other projects, they needed to hedge that ETH exposure as well. If ETH had gone down, that would have been great for them, because they would have sold ETH early. They could have bought back, right? But ETH was pumping during that time. So all they were supposed to be doing was, hedging ETH up exposure. And they said they were doing that. They were watching at all times, and, they didn't do that. But I actually don't think that what they weren't doing for us was any worse than what they weren't doing otherwise. Based on what we've seen and heard, like, I only knew that they were manipulating sell, from slightly before I got there to slightly after I arrived. It seems like they were doing it for a lot longer. It is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know if you can talk much about this. Please say so if you can't. But how were you compensated? How was the KeyFi team compensated for handling Celsius?
How was the KeyFi team compensated? So we were supposed to be compensated. So first of all, we earned very low salaries, like 60 to 80K a year.
Okay.
And we were supposed to be compensated based on the profit share, which was attached to our lawsuit, which was basically a dollar-based accounting calculation based on how much money we made for the company in dollars. And that was only because the hedging and the cost of hedging was supposed to be attributed to our P&L. So let's say hedging cost, 5% of capital contributed. That cost would come out of us, but the results of the hedging of that would have been in our benefit. So, we've asked Celsius many times for a full accounting. They've never given one to us. We were basically supposed to earn a 50% profit share on the staking activities, or basically Matic and synthetics, and then Dash was small, and then 20% profit share on all other DeFi activities that weren't Matic, synthetics, or Dash, I believe. Okay. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, we're going to kind of switch topics here, if that's all right. We wanted to talk a little bit about... Sure. I was actually talking to you a little bit about this in New York City when we hung out for a little bit. We recently had the government kind of shutting down Tornado Cash. We've seen, I think, 2 devs in the Netherlands actually get arrested for writing the code for Tornado Cash and things like that. Here in America, code is considered free speech. However, do you think the government's kind of overstepping their bounds here by kind of censoring Tornado Cash? Do you think this is an overreach? And then, what do you think the ramifications of this are going to be?
I think that what's happened with Tornado and the general censoring of smart contracts versus individuals has been really shitty. Has been a major step back in everything related to, kind of, I don't know if it's free speech, but open development and progress in, in technological development across the world. I think it's crazy that the government decided, and I've read a few articles on this recently, that the government decided to sanction smart contracts as opposed to people and what that means, et cetera. I feel like the government overreached. I feel like Coin Center is doing a good job in pushing back against that. I don't know if they'll be successful. I hope that they are. I just find it really sad that for the first time, we're seeing the government being able to censor non-individuals, non-companies, GitHub repos or specific smart contracts. It's supposed to be fully decentralized. And it's not just the government. It's without even being asked twice, you have people like DYDX and Microsoft, who owns GitHub, instantly deleting the repos of certain developers. What the fuck is that? Seriously, what the fuck is that? I guess Microsoft doesn't give a shit anymore, but come on, shouldn't for for them to be respected by the developer community, which is the community that GitHub serves, shouldn't they at least have to have been ordered by the government to delete those repos before doing so? Deleting them on the same day. Like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, like this is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Um,
Yeah.
it makes me feel crappy because honestly, like, what leads to the greatest technological innovation, right? Like war and adversity. If you think about the leaps and bounds that we've made in medical technology over the last 100 years and other scientific discoveries, everything has been in some way, not everything, but many things, most things, perhaps a plurality of them, have been derived from some form of war or conflict.
It's not just
And that's
the
how
last.
we've progressed,
It's not
right?
just the last century either. At Cambridge, I studied a module of history of science last year. This goes back to the 12th and 13th centuries. Even in Europe, in the early modern era, in the 1500s and 1600s, most of scientific research was done around eras of war and extreme poverty and extreme hunger. And you can see that, we can bring back the quotes, strong time. Oh, what was it called? Strong times build hard times build strong men build good times build weak men, and then weak men again build the hard times again. We can see that cycle repeating with censorship all across social media, with YouTube, with Spotify, with those sort of platforms, creator platforms. Then on the developer ends, um, some front ends being shut down because of Aave. Aave was also stopped integrating with some backends as well. On the topic of that, what do you think the future of multi-party computation is? It's quite niche. I've been diving quite a lot deeper into privacy networks. I've been supporting Nillion, which from the start, which is a privacy network which is built on a technology which competes and rivals what MPC brought. MPC inherently is unscalable. Every single node must exchange information to compute outputs, which limits how scalable MPC gets. So, what do you think the outlook on the future of privacy networks, future of MPC is?
Yeah. So I don't know for sure. Obviously, no one does. I think that the issues that we've seen with, or the issues that have arisen from the sanctioning of Tornado Cash and the blowback from that from the developer community definitely behooves the idea that people are like, what was the original reason that a lot of us came to blockchain? Pre 2018, it was privacy, security, anonymity, right? And a lot of that has gone away. And I feel like seeing these types of sanctions and issues brings us back to our core roots of why we were here to begin with. Not necessarily to make money, but literally to have an alternative to the traditional financial system. So with that said, I think that we'll start to see some form of resurgence or, uh, I don't know what the word is. Some type of like uh,
Rebirth.
re-welcoming of privacy networks in general as a result of this. Maybe not to the degree that I expect, but
I do
something along those lines.
I do think crypto gives democratization of financial infrastructure, but people do not put their bank statements public, right?
Yep.
Like you wouldn't want everyone to know how much money you exactly lastly, the government. You don't want the government obviously to know how much money you have, what are the transactions you are making, what are the interactions you are making with different parts of the financial system. Just based on that reasoning alone, I think privacy networks have a place in that people want to use blockchains, and privacy computation, for confidential data storage could be a pretty good use case as well. What are your thoughts on just macro? What are your macro thoughts? Is there more pain coming? What's going on?
I don't know. I'm not a professional economist. I do think that things aren't looking great in the macro world right now. I think we're going to face a year or two of, pretty stringent and tight economic policy from the Fed and from other, global world banks, simply because, things are not good right now and we need to get inflation under control. Um, you know, the global economy has slowed down, from COVID. I don't think we've ever really felt that. There's wars going on, et cetera, et cetera. Um, in terms of crypto, aside from the macro economy, I think that it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the ETH merge. I'm hopeful. I think that I will say that I, as a power user, don't believe that any type of testnet merge run throughs or testnet merges represent or replicate what could or will happen with the real merge. There just isn't enough activity on any of the test nets to really replicate problems that could occur when the real merge happens. Obviously, I'm optimistic. I don't know if it will change anything for Ethereum, assuming things go well. I know that we all know the transaction fees aren't going to change in the near future. Sure, it's going to be more environmental, but as a macro, viewpoint, that doesn't change much. So maybe it will make it more, or it will make ETH more valid in the arguments of why Polkadot, why Cardano, why others that are proof of stake only. So maybe ETH will gain back some ground. I don't know. I'm not an ETH maxi, but I'm a crypto maxi, and I'm definitely bullish ETH overall. I really hope this merge goes well. I think we're going to face a year or two of pain, but whenever I look at the log charts of, Bitcoin and other crypto, I always feel like the log charts and those rainbows that you see, they don't necessarily follow the macro economy. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of our industry.
Yeah, I heard you just a second ago, talking about some of these other chains. Can you give us a little bit of insight? Like, what are you bullish and bearish on for, the future? Because I also believe that we're going to have a year or two of sideways, a lot of pain. The world looks fucked right now. What are you bullish on? What are you going to try and be accumulating? What do you think it's a good bet? And then what are you super bearish on? What do you think is just not going to have a resurgence? It's just going to die like everything else.
I'm bearish on, I guess, proof of work only chains that don't have secondary use cases or things that don't have any type of smart contract functionality. And I don't mean Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin has Lightning, other types of things, or you can build kind of on-chain, off-chain hybrids relating to Bitcoin. But I feel like a lot of the older 2013, 2014, 2015, proof of work coins that are not privacy based will probably finally see their end. What am I bullish on specifically? I think that as we see the ETH merge go through, hopefully successfully, we'll start to see a greater acceptance of, alternatives like Polkadot, Cardano. I mean, I don't actually hold any Polkadot or ADA. Literally from L1 perspective, I literally just have ETH and Bitcoin, but I feel like with the merge being successful, we'll start to see a greater acceptance of proof of stake based chains. We'll probably see some nothing at stake attacks on Ethereum, and that will, in one way or another, kind of shake out how we deal with those types of issues. I also think that the way in which we have not just nothing at stake attacks, but censorship and the issues that we've seen very well publicized with like Coinbase post Tornado Cash and other types of, centralized organization intervention in blockchain, we might start to see shifts away from Ethereum or back toward Ethereum based on how much governments can enforce how they want things to be going or what they want to see, right? So like, I feel like that's going to be a very important play, because coming back to what I said before, why are we all here to begin with, right? If everything's proof of stake and everything has smart contract functionality, it really is just about what's better for privacy and security and where the developers are, right? So Polkadot, Ethereum, Cardano, they become all very relatively similar in that regard. So, we're going to start to see like if people start censoring transactions on Ethereum, maybe they get slashed, maybe, the community feels a certain way about them. We don't know, but those are going to be the types of things that inform what the future looks like, in my opinion.
Yeah, great response. And I know you didn't have a lot of time today, and we appreciate you giving your time to us, but I wanted to wrap it up. We have a lot of listeners who, they're kind of just crypto Twitter degens. They're trying to make it. A lot of guys haven't made it yet. They might have ran up a few million in the last cycle or this cycle, and then they lost it all, which, we've all seen happen time and time again. What is like some of your life advice to these guys on like, when you get that, I'll call retirement money, $2 to $5 million for most people. When you get that kind of money, how can these guys hang on to it while staying in crypto? Because, it's a passion for a lot of people, without, going 50x long on something, losing it all, chasing it, and
cash out
round tripping. Yeah.
Cash out half, not USDC, actual USD, pay your taxes, buy your house, buy something, I don't know, I want to say in the traditional stock market, but like whether it's in your mattress or you're buying a house, take out half. If you've gone from 0 to 5 million, take out half, get it out of the crypto ecosystem, not USDC, real hard fiat, put it into something that's safe or that's a hard asset in the real world before crypto existed, and then play with the rest of your money. My first go around in crypto, I learned this the hard way. I went from 0 to 7 figures, back down to 0. It wasn't worth it. And you learn from those mistakes. And that's really the way to go, because crypto will go up, it will come back down. As long as you cash out when you're way up, you'll be able to get back in at a better cost basis. I'm not saying cash out everything, but definitely play your risk parameters in the right way.
It comes back to
and just real quick, following up on that. There obviously is a stage in the cycles where it's just peak euphoria. People's portfolios are at all-time high. A lot of people, that's when they don't cash out, and then they round trip back down. So when do you think it is like time, during that stage? Because a lot of people just get way too caught up.
Is when you need to cash out. At peak euphoria is when you need to cash out. When everyone else is being greedy, you need to be protectionary. When everyone else is being protectionary, then you be greedy. That's the advice.
That's great advice. Great advice.
It's a good note to end it on. Jason,
yeah,
really, really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you guys very much. No, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Hope everything goes smoothly with the Celsius drama, and hope to see you again back in action very soon.
Talk soon, guys.
Yeah,
all right.
Hope to see you back in New York.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take it easy. Have a lovely evening. See ya.
Yeah, thank you all for listening.
Now, here's a word about our sponsor. Alpha DAO is an exclusive group of some of the top builders and founders in Web3 and all of crypto. The Alpha House is based in New York City, in the heart of Manhattan, and hosts weekly mixers where you can get exclusive access to the best networking in the space. Members also get exclusive access to deal flow, priority access to host events at the Alpha House, and so much more. Memberships are based on an interview process. So if you think you have what it takes, check out www.meetalpha.org and get in contact with us to schedule an interview.